because it's self-evident that it screws guys up. And this is something I wasn't even really aware of when I was in porn. When I got, it's sort of towards the tail end of my career when I got out of it, like especially when I started coaching guys, loads of dudes would come to me and say, yo, man, I've got a real problem with porn. I'm like, it's like a habit. I'm addicted to it.
But dude, I wanted to talk to you about something, man. I know a lot of people, talk to you about like porn career and stuff like that. I noticed something, where I noticed it's kind of like a little bit of a pivot in your content where you're kind of talking about like the dangers of guys consuming porn and like what it's kind of like doing to guys' brains, stuff like that. I guess for you, what made you start like covering those topics?
Well, in my defense, I wouldn't say that's a pivot, because if you go back 4 years, I've been saying this for 4 years, don't consume porn. FYI, just saying it in case anyone wants to like call me a fucking grifter or some bullshit. I've been saying.
I just noticed it's more of a focal point.
But lately I've been putting more of a focus on it. Yeah. Absolutely, yeah, that's correct. So, bro, it's just it's self-evident. I think like I drove here to Vegas yesterday from LA.
Yeah,
and as I'm driving in, I'm seeing like OnlyFans billboards and shit. I got like an OnlyFans girl advertising on a fucking billboard.
Yeah.
Okay, this has gotten too normalized.
Right.
And I get it. Like you drive into Vegas, you're going to see like billboards for like Spearmint Rhino, like strip clubs and cabaret shows and stuff. I get that. It's kind of always been here. I get that's why people come to Vegas. But the idea of someone like putting an OnlyFans ad on a billboard like blew me away.
Yeah.
There's zero. We've taken all the shame out of it.
Right.
Which in a way is kind of it's kind of interesting because it's kind of made porn lame now.
Yeah.
The porn industry has become so mainstream, it has become boring now.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's everywhere. Everyone, like every like half of the women in America have a goddamn OnlyFans. Well, they're like, no, everyone knows someone who's got one.
Oh, for sure.
Right? So it's become like, so like tired and played out and boring. But that's not the reason why that's just an added bonus. That's not necessarily the reason why I sort of say tell guys don't consume that stuff, because it's self-evident that it screws guys up. Like,
yeah. And
this is something I wasn't even really aware of when I was in porn. When I got, it's sort of towards the tail end of my career when I got out of it, like especially when I started coaching guys, loads of dudes would come to me and say, yo, man, I've got a real problem with porn. I'm like, it's like a habit. I'm addicted to it, et cetera, et cetera. And as a result, they're having problems with, getting it up with their girlfriend or getting up with a girl at all. They have problems with delayed ejaculation.
Yeah.
They have massive problems with motivation. Because if you think about it from a psychological perspective, like why do most men get out of bed in the morning? They get out of bed to fuck, subconsciously, for the pursuit of women.
Yeah.
Right? You build things, you make money, you network, you achieve success. Like it's all eventually, as an end result, it's basically in the pursuit of a woman and thus, kids and having a, prolonging your genetic lineage, right? That's ultimate. Like whether you're conscious of it or not, that's ultimately the driving
factor. That's behind
factor.
everything. It's evolution.
Exactly. So when you give a guy unlimited access to like visually without having to do any effort, all he has to do is type a few things on a keyboard.
Yeah.
It takes away all of the drive,
right,
to accomplish anything. And on top of that, like the biochemistry of it is his dopamine receptors are getting hammered again and again and again. So his dopamine receptors have become less sensitive. It's kind of exactly the same effect as like over consuming sugar does to like a diabetic.
Yeah.
Like your insulin becomes like, you become insulin resistant. Like you become, your insulin has less of an effect on your body when you're diabetic. And so you can die from consuming like sugar and stuff like that. With porn, it's the same thing. Your dopamine receptors become less sensitive. So you need more and more and more stimulus to achieve the same effect. And dopamine is like the motivation compound in your brain. It's what causes you to go after things and pursue goals and complete goals, right?
Right.
So when you screw that up, it's no surprise we've got a bunch of dudes sitting around in their mother's, I hate the stereotype, but in their mother's basement playing video games.
Yeah.
Right. Obviously not everyone's doing exactly that, but the stereotype's there for a reason. There's a lot of disaffected young men who are sedated by it.
Yeah. Yeah. And like they don't have any motivation to change or improve themselves or do anything at this point.
Yeah. It's kind of weird to me. I maybe Australian culture is a little bit different from American culture, but I hear a lot of stories of guys, in their mid to late 20s still living with their parents.
Yeah, that's pretty common. It's pretty common here. Yeah.
Right. And it's like not that I have a problem. I don't think that, parents should kick their kids out of the house. I think don't get me wrong, I don't think that's actually the case, but I do think paradoxically, that as a man, you should be the one to get yourself out of the house.
Yeah. It's not like these guys are like staying at home, like, because they're starting a business or something. It's like, no, it's because they're just working a 9 to 5. They're sleeping on their couch. Like, they're not actually doing anything super productive outside of what they have to do.
Completely.
Yeah. And I guess, do you think, it's getting too mainstream to the point where, like, there's not enough shame about it? Because now it's almost, at least like when I was growing up, because I used to have a problem with porn as well. Like, I admit it, I completely had a problem with it. I was exposed to it when I was like 12 or 13. And I think that when I remember growing up, that it was almost like encouraged as something that was healthy. It's like masturbation's healthy, consuming porn was healthy, or maybe it wasn't healthy, but it like no one really talks about the bad effects. Like, we talk about the bad effects of like heroin or of opiates, stuff like that, but not a lot of people are talking about the negative effects of porn and how bad the addiction can really get.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of took us by surprise, I think, because you had, I mean, how old are you again?
I'm 24.
Yeah, I mean, you're 24. I'm 37, right? So like, I think it was 2001, like early 2000s, when like Pornhub came around.
Yeah,
like Pornhub, RedTube, like Xvideos, Xhamster, all these big what we call tube sites in the porn. That's when you see a massive shift in the industry, in its exposure, in its effect on men. You see a massive difference in its effect on like rates of virginity amongst young men and stuff.
Yeah,
there's a lot of correlations happening around the same time,
right?
As porn becomes basically accessible to everybody.
Yeah,
in infinite variety as well. Prior to that, it was like, okay, you needed to you stole your uncle's like dirty magazine that he had stashed under his bed or something. That's
what you grew up.
That's what I grew up on. Right. And then when I was a teenager, then the internet happened, and you started to get like internet pornography and stuff like that. And even then, it was still like primarily based upon subscription sites, and there were still videos and DVDs. You still had to go to like an adult DVD store to get like one. You know what I mean?
You get to put some effort in.
Yeah, there was effort, and there was a barrier to entry.
Yeah,
like an age-restricted barrier to entry.
Well, did that actually matter back then? Well, did it have any effect back then?
I think initially, yeah, I think it did. Especially when it came to like going to like you couldn't go into an adult store if you didn't have an ID of like being 18 or maybe 21 here in this country.
Yeah,
but then like all these free free YouTube-like sites pop up out of nowhere. Well, I don't know, they pop up all at the same time, and then bang. Everyone with an internet connection can now access endless amounts of pornography for free, regardless of their age.
Yeah.
And that's a big Pandora's box we opened up.
100%.
And I think that's it definitely screwed with like the millennial generation, and it 100% screwed with Gen Z.
Got it. And is that why, because I know you coach a lot of guys, anytime they're having problems in the bedroom, is that why you always suggest the first thing they do is cut out porn?
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple reasons for that. Well, there's all the problems we just talked about there, right?
Yeah.
As in, like, it's motivational and problems, and it's requiring too much stimulus to achieve action or to achieve orgasm.
Yeah.
If we can cut that out to start with, cool, these problems can start to go, back to normal. But it's also a case of like a lot of guys come to me with problems even getting a girlfriend in the first place.
Yeah.
And it's like, even though that's not necessarily my specialty, like a guy like Michael Sartain is way better at, teaching guys practically how to actually get like beautiful women.
Yeah.
But I do believe that if you are kind of getting rid of that fire in you every day without doing any effort, without approaching a woman, without talking to a woman, if you're getting rid of that drive, that ain't going to help you. Like you're going to need to build that drive up a little bit. I don't like to use the term like transmutation of sexual energy, but the idea, the principle behind it is pretty solid. Like the idea of like, okay, if you just stop off for a while, if you just stop consuming porn for a while, okay, you're going to get hornier, you're going to have blue balls, you're going to be like,
we're going to figure it out.
Yeah, do something about it, motherfucker. Go do something about it. I remember this is back in my mid-20s. One of my buddies from England. He was what do you call like foreign exchange, not a foreign exchange student, but like a guy who was on a work visa, come out to Australia, and he crashed on my couch for a few weeks or whatever. And he eventually he hadn't lost his virginity, and he was probably like 23 at the time, and he sort of got to this point where he was like, you know what, I'm going to fix this problem. And this is the smartest thing I've ever seen anyone do. He gave me his laptop charger.
Yeah.
So he had a limited amount of battery time on his laptop, so he couldn't off.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he'd do it like, for a couple of days and he's out. He could barely like contact his family back home. He couldn't like really work or search the internet or do anything at all. So he's like,
That's
okay,
smart.
and he said, don't give me back the charger to my laptop until I've lost my virginity. And I said, cool.
That's awesome.
That's a great
challenge.
Happy to help with this.
Yeah.
And that's a great solution, because all he did for the next month was go out every single night to bars and hit on women. And within 2.5 weeks, he'd done it.
Yeah, I mean, numbers game at that point.
It was a numbers game, right? Yeah. And a practice, and to be fair, he was quite autistic when I met him. And he lost he was still a bit autistic when he lost virginity, but he helped. It helped. I fully believe that, because I've seen it personally. Like, this guy's a great example of it. I think you can just program autistic social awkwardness out of a guy through repetition.
I completely agree.
And I think a lot of guys think that they think that's impossible, or they think they're doomed because they might be a little bit socially awkward. It's just it's a numbers game. It's a repetition. It's like your brain needs exposure to social cues. And if you're somewhat autistic and socially retarded or whatever already, you're not really going to be putting yourself in that many social situations, especially with women.
Yeah.
So you just need constant repetition and exposure. Your brain needs to see, your brain needs to see examples. It's probably even more important than just the aspect of talking to women yourself.
Yeah.
Your brain needs to see examples of what a man who is successful with women looks like.
Right.
His mannerisms, the way he talks, the way he carries himself, his body language.
Yeah.
The way women respond to him, the way women respond to his jokes, the kind of jokes he tells women, the kind of, the playful jabs, the playful vibes.
Yeah.
Because even though you don't necessarily even need to pay attention to that consciously, but just by being around it enough, your subconscious brain will eventually pick up on it.